Hello, Captain Obvious here with Geeks for Dummies, a show that will cover various topics that people can geek out about, from the relatively known and well-known to very obscure and little-known. Today's topic is very near and dear to my heart, with me being a veteran of the United States Army. Military movies? You're doing it wrong! Anyway, this is not a top 10 countdown. This is not most noticeable to least noticeable. This is not the most common to least common. This is just 10 things I happen to notice when I sit down to watch military movies, or movies that happen to relate to the military or portray military characters. Number 1. There was this horrible Z-grade movie that I had watched just a couple of days ago that portrayed an Army captain with a digitized camo that matches what they were today, but the cover or patrol cap that he wore was more the style of the U.S. Marine Corps or the U.S. Navy with the fixed ridges on the front. Given the fact it didn't have the globe and anchor, I'm going to lean more towards the U.S. Navy, but it was still the Army's digitized camouflage pattern. The Army, as far as our patrol cap goes, it's just a basic patrol cap, unless of course it's the Ranger roll, but that's something completely different. Number 2. Uniform and underwear will never have the same pattern. Doesn't matter how hardcore you are, you're more than likely going to wear something like Hanes, which, whether it be boxers, boxer briefs, or briefs, you know, something that's going to be comfortable and functional and practical, no matter what you're doing, whether you're in the rear or out in the field or deployed in a real world situation. It's not going to be something that matches your uniform. In the same horrible Z-grade movie, I saw a female staff sergeant take off her ACU top, took off her undershirt, and she was wearing a brassiere that was digitized camo. If you're that hardcore, you might want to consider mental health counseling. Number 3. If you're going to portray your characters in uniform, at least adhere to the regulations. The Army has AR 670-1, the Marine Corps has Publication 1020-34G. They are pretty clear and concise about the wear and appearance of the uniform. They cover everything, from battle uniforms to physical fitness uniforms to your dress greens, dress browns, dress blues, you name it. It covers everything, from proper wear to the appearance of ribbons, medals, proper insignia, service bars to deployment bars or overseas service bars, depending on what you want to call it. These publications cover everything, and they're cheap. You can find them online for free if you look hard enough. You know, you could order them through military surplus stores. You could order them out of military surplus catalogs. They're not that expensive, and they're very easy to read. Number 4. Non-commissioned officers, or NCOs, which in the Army is sergeant or above, are specially trained soldiers who have worked hard to get to where they're at, and they go through specialized training to basically serve over those who are subordinate to them. They are the backbone of the military. They are the ones that get the job done, and they put up with more bullshit than anybody else in the military. One of the big mistakes I see is how they are addressed. Sarge is never a proper honorific. Yeah, I don't care how hardcore or laid back a unit is. They're always going to address them as sergeant, or first sergeant, or sergeant major. You know, they've worked hard. They've earned the respect. Give it to them with the proper honorific. Saluting. Number 5. This is probably the most basic military function you will ever see. You see it in every movie that is about, relates to, or has some sort of military affiliation. A proper salute is not hard to do. Fingers and thumbs are extended and joined, and they are brought up to the brow or the edge of the glasses. I've heard both. I prefer going up to the brow, slightly canted forward, with your upper arm parallel to the ground. I have seen movie mistakes where they cover it like this, or like this, or flop it like a dead fish across the forehead. If more movies would just follow regulations, they'd come across as more real and more enjoyable. Number 6. Colored patches do not go on battle uniforms. Colored patches such as this are relegated for the dress uniform, like the dress greens or the dress blues. Okay? You will never see this on a combat uniform because it sticks out. What they switch to instead is what they call subdued. And I have my service uniform from when I was in. You'll notice that it is OD green and black. You'll see these on combat uniforms more often in modern day military movies. Colored patches were used in World War II and Korea, and I think some parts of Vietnam. I can't say for certain. I didn't serve there. But they had recently switched to the subdued patch to blend in with the uniform better. I think on the newer uniforms, if they haven't changed the color scheme, it would tend to stick out, but not as bad as a full color patch would. Number 7. Sometimes I think some military movies, or just movies that have military characters in them, unjustly categorize those affiliated with the military as inhuman, unemotional, heartless, and generally disconnected from humanity. Service members are very human. They're some of the nicest people you'll ever meet. They're very helpful. They want to help you. And to portray them in such a fashion is basically like stabbing them in the back. They don't deserve it. They work very hard. Number 8. Another portrayal injustice is portraying a non-commissioned officer, somebody who has been trusted to be in command of somebody else, as being disorganized, unprofessional, in general disarray. But the biggest injustice of it is that nobody else in the movie tends to notice this, or they treat it like that's how it's always been. I can tell you for a fact, if that were to happen in real life, said non-commissioned officer would probably be looking at a demotion, if not a possible separation from service. And to portray him in such a manner, it's not fair. They're the most professional people you will ever meet. They know regulations off the top of their heads, and if they don't know all of them, they know the important ones, and they know things that will help them, you, and everyone else around you survive in the worst of situations, or at least to the best of their ability. Number 9, basic general orders that are violated. The utmost general order that I remember that was just ingrained into me and said time and time and time again, not because I violated it, but because it's very important. I will guard everything with the limits of my post and quit my post only when properly relieved. In both small budget, intermediate budget, and big budget films, I guess I should say in all three instead of both, there are instances where I see people who are assigned to guard a position, they leave without somebody to relieve them. Or their relief is on the way, but they still leave, thus leaving their post unguarded. That is a serious offense. It usually means that the said person, their entire service record is scrutinized while they determine what kind of disciplinary measures need to be taken. If somebody told them to leave, or that it was okay to leave, they're looked into and investigated. So on and so forth until they find out why it happened. It is a very serious offense. It doesn't typically happen in the military. And number 10, the most common mistake in military movies or action movies, too, they suffer the same fate, is the infinite ammunition mistake. You never see them reload. Lately in Hollywood, they've been getting better. They've been keeping a closer eye on it and go, hey, let's throw this in to make it more realistic, and I wish more movies would do it. Instead, you get these magazines that are only supposed to be, let's say for an M4 or an M16, that are supposed to be 30 rounds, and they suddenly have 35 to 40, if not 50 or 60 rounds. Pistols that have 10 to 15 rounds suddenly have 20 to 25. It's not a major flaw, but it doesn't seem as real. And the only time that I've seen it portrayed in films where they've run out of ammunition is if it's important to the plot, but otherwise you don't see it. They just magically have enough ammunition in that magazine. Magazine, not clip. There's a big difference. Anyway, this, like I said, this was not a top 10 countdown. This is not the most common to least common or anything of that nature. These are just mistakes I notice in films. Hopefully you've enjoyed this show. This is Captain Obvious with Geeks for Dummies, signing out.